breaking news out of the UK today as the BBC reports that Lostprophets disgraced ex-singer Ian Watkins has died in a prison attack. This news is coming out just minutes ago, so I had to jump on and do an emergency stream. Let's read the details here from the BBC. So the disgraced rock star was serving 29 years in prison for child SA offenses. And guys, there is some pretty graphic language used in this story, so I am going to have to censor a couple of the statements which are actually written and reported here by the BBC. So a bit of context as to what happened with Watkins. So Watkins was jailed in December of 2013 for a string of child SA offenses, including the attempted grape of a baby. Again, this is hard for me to even talk about, but we have to give the context as to just how much of a monster this person was. He was attacked with a knife by another inmate, according to sources. Police said detectives were investigating and inquiring what was going on at the scene. He was also attacked in prison in August 2023, but his injuries were not life-threatening. It's crazy how these guys always manage to survive on these attacks initially, but it looks like he wasn't so lucky this time. Watkins was sentenced to 29 years in prison with a further 6 years on license, and his two co-defendants, the mothers of the children he abused, were jailed for 14 and 17 years. So for anybody just joining, Lostprophets ex-singer Ian Watkins has been killed in a knife attack in prison. I feel like this isn't overly surprising for anybody who's familiar with the way that jail goes, by the way. Like this is kind of one that you could see coming. You know, there's a lot of people in prison for crimes that are much less depraved, who've been killed, who've been targeted, who've been victimized. I don't even think it's because of the fact that this dude was a celebrity. I think it's just the nature of the crimes being so egregious, which made him a target. So let's read a little bit more. So Watkins was jailed for depraved crimes. This is what the BBC reports. He admitted that he attempted the grape and SA of a child under 13, but pleaded not guilty to grape. He also admitted to conspiring to grape a child, 3 counts of SA involving children, 7 involving taking, making, or possessing indecent images of children, and 1 count of possessing an extreme adult image. I'm trying to censor as best as I can so we don't get taken down here. Involving an act on an animal. Okay, so this is the individual that we're talking about. A sick, depraved individual targeting children, targeting animals. Just the worst type of human being possibly ever created. And it sort of leads me to wonder why the death penalty wasn't implemented in the first place. You know, we've spoken about the death penalty here on this channel and my thoughts on it. And my stance is this: if you use your power as a man, or a human in general, an adult human, to victimize beings that are helpless. So for me, that means children and or animals. I don't think we need you in this world, especially when it's multiple counts. That may be a controversial statement. I don't know why that's a controversial statement, by the way. I think it's pretty common sense. So for me, that's where I stand. I think especially after multiple counts. 1 count is bad enough. We can throw him on death row if you ask me. But multiple counts of victimizing people and or beings, animals, whatever the case may be, who are helpless, I don't think you deserve to live in our society, breathe our air. I don't think you should be among us. That's just my personal opinion. So it says here, during sentencing, Mr. Justice Royce said the case broke new ground and plunged into new depths of depravity. Any decent person will experience shock, revulsion, and incredulity. The judge said Watkins had a corrupting influence and had shown a complete lack of remorse. Well, there you go. Look, if you're going to show a lack of remorse for what you did, why should I feel remorseful for you getting taken out of this world? And I want to make it very clear, I am not for violence against really anybody. I don't believe that we should kill our rivals. I don't believe we should be violent towards our political opponents. That's not my style. I don't believe in violence really in any form, but I do think in a lot of situations there is an exception, and this is one of those situations. A guy who did this type of crime with no remorse, I don't feel bad for him. I don't feel bad for him. And you know what? It kind of is almost like good news to see that this happened. This is one of those stories I feel like most of us can all agree on across the world. So this was just an emergency stream really quick to fill you guys in on what happened. It sounds like it was a pretty gruesome attack, which did lead to the end of this guy's life. It was also not the first attack on him, but that's my verdict. You do something like this multiple times, you do these egregious crimes, you come in with no remorse, you cannot expect remorse for you, you cannot expect anybody to feel bad for you, you can't even really expect people to protect you. Because I'm sure that the prison guards probably didn't work that hard to protect this guy, given the nature of his crimes. I've known people who've worked in prisons. I know multiple people who've worked in law enforcement. So I've heard a lot of stories about this. And all the stories they tell you guys are 100% true. The way that the other inmates will try to victimize you, the way that you will be sort of typecast within the prison as not typecast, but you'll become a mark. That's really what you will become. You'll become a mark in prison. And this is common knowledge that people know from movies, etc. The other aspect here is that Ian Watkins, while he did have some success, I mean, the BBC here reports that as a rock star in his 20s, he sold millions of albums around the world and commanded huge arena crowds. They had top 10 singles and also climbed the top 40. But Lostprophets, not exactly a household name. Ian Watkins, not exactly, the definition of an A-list celebrity. So I would imagine that that scenario actually hurt him more because he did have some notoriety, especially in the UK. He was quite well known, but he wasn't well known enough to the point where he would have protective custody. He wasn't well known enough to the point where the prison would be cutting any corners to try to keep this guy safe. He's not of the level of a Bill Cosby when he went to prison. Or, any of these guys who get locked up, even an R. Kelly. This dude was in general population while also being somewhat famous. I think that's probably almost worse for him than being completely unknown or being a huge celebrity. Because if you're at least unknown, then you just have a target on your back for your crimes. If you're a celebrity, you're going to get protection. But if you have a target on your back for crimes and you're somewhat known, and it could kind of raise someone in prison status to do something to you, to harm you, to try to even take your life, that's a really dangerous area to be in. That's that middle ground that is incredibly compromising. So look, this makes sense, but this is also the first story about somebody passing where I'm not going to end it by saying rest in peace. I'm not going to end it by wishing the best to anybody. I'm going to say this guy got exactly what he deserves, and I don't feel bad about it. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. I will be back live tonight for a full stream. Like I said, this was just an emergency meeting, but we'll continue the conversation down below. Let me know your thoughts on Lostprophets ex-singer Ian Watkins.